sit down somewhere?
Mom,
This is
he's
so
picking on me.
If you know your party's extension, please dial it now.
Houston, we have a problem.
Sick of all this complaining all the time.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Multitasking in Heels. We just wanted to let you know that if you are here listening to us right now, we want to first thank you. Then we want to remind you, you are a badass. If you are a female, you are a badass because you do so much for everyone all the time. And if you're a male, you're a badass because you is smart, you is good, you is smart. We tell the truth on this podcast, the real stuff, the ugly stuff, the life's messy stuff, because we know that everyone is going through this right now and people don't like feeling alone. So stop singing All by Myself a la Bridget Jones' Diary. Share the podcast with someone who needs a boost and remind yourself you're not alone. So Liz, what were your pump and flat moments of the week?
So my pump moment actually came to me courtesy of a sponsored ad on Facebook, believe it or not, that made me really laugh out loud. And normally I just scroll right past those things. The first line of copy in this ad really caught my eye because it said, quote, "All crotch and butt smells come from bacteria digesting fluids on our skin." I mean, I'm hooked. Tell me more. So it was a sponsored ad for this company called Lumi deodorant. And the copy was so funny that I was like, I need to watch this video. And they had sort of like these mock testimonials in the video. And one of the women said, "I applied Lumi yesterday to the groin area and 24 hours later, I'm still odor free." I mean, again, I have a Beavis and Butthead sense of humor. So you say groin, you say whatever, I'm definitely laughing. Another woman said, "Lumi is the best deodorant I've found for those sweaty folds, cracks, and crevices." And the woman in the video who was sort of like the spokesperson was hysterical. The copy was hysterical. The whole video was really, really funny. So allegedly, this deodorant is for your privates. They sell regular normal deodorant for your pits and what have you, but this is for other places. It says it's good for after workouts or before intimacy. And if you don't love it, you can send it back for a full refund, which seems kind of gross. But anyway, Lumi deodorant, if you're looking for a podcast to sponsor, I will pimp your butt deodorant all day, every day. It was really, really funny. I started following them on social media. Maybe I should be mildly offended that the Facebook algorithm thought I needed this product, but I don't care. It made me laugh. I thought it was really funny. We'll post the link to the YouTube video on our website so you guys can see it and get a good chuckle as well. So that was my pump moment.
I love that.
My flat moment is ridiculous. So, you know, we had our cat of 18 years pass away over the summer. And the kids, you know, obviously very upset about it. And I was trying to think of something to make them happy, especially with losing her and COVID and weirdness. And so we bought lizards, 2 little like geckos, basically. I had them when I was a kid and they're super easy to take care of. And you can take them out of the cage and, you know, whatever, they just hang out. They're really, really chill. And so I got a couple of those for the kids, Angus and Penelope. And they love them and they love taking them out and, you know, they just hang out with the kids watching TV or while they're playing Xbox or whatever. But Will has a tendency to take one out and then be like, "Oh, do you want him or do you want her?" And so he took Penelope out one night and before he went to bed, he gave her to me and was like, "Oh, Mom, I'm going to go to bed. Will you take her?" I said, "Sure." So I just put her on my sweater and I was wearing a sweater that had all these ruffles in it. So she like went underneath one of the ruffles. So it was all warm and cozy. And then I fell asleep on the couch and as I often do, watching a baking show. And I woke up and then I went to bed. And then the next morning I went down to the basement where we keep their terrarium. And I was like, "Where's Penelope?" And like everything with COVID, nobody can remember like what day it is, what we did when. And Danny was like, "She was definitely in there when I went to bed last night." And Will was like, "I might have taken her out this morning and brought her up to my room, blah, 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 blah." So I'm like tearing the basement apart, Can't find her. I'm tearing Will's bedroom apart. Can't find her. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I put her back. I'm pretty sure I saw her. Like, we don't even know what day it is at this point anymore in our house. Avery's crying because she thinks Penelope's lost forever. And she's only like 4 inches long, so you could lose her pretty easily. And I can't find her. And I'm like, all right, one last resort. And I go upstairs to my bedroom and I take the sweater out that I was wearing the night before and I gently shook it out and I just hear plop. And she fell out my sweater. She had been in there all night.
Was she alive?
Oh, yeah. She's totally fine. So I was like, oh, look who I found, Penelope. And Daddy's like, no more taking out the lizards after 10 p.m. So that was my flat moment. Almost killing my kid's new pet after they have lost their pet over the summer. So,
Hey, at least you remembered.
yes. Yeah. It was pretty humiliating, but, that's COVID, right? I don't even know what time it is, what day it is, what I did 5 minutes ago or 5 days ago.
Exactly.
So how was your week, Linz?
So I'm going to start with my flat moment and go into my pump because it'll make more sense that way. So my flat moment started in the middle of the night the other day. Woke up in searing pain and was like, so this is what it's like to get old. And went downstairs, tried to roll out the pain, drank some water, watched some Schitt's Creek as you do. Said, what the hell is this? Tried to put a heating pad on it. Didn't know what was going on. Then the pain kept moving up my leg and it felt like a fireball in my leg that was going to burst. Yes. And I remembered that my parents both have blood clots in our family. So it kind of scared me. And I made sure that I paid attention to what was going on. I took a shower. I calmly told my husband the next morning that for the last 24 hours, there's been a pain that's moved up my leg. Mm-hmm. And what should we do about it? And we called the on-call doctor. And as we're doing that, I also noticed that my right arm was numb.
Jesus.
So it was a little scary, yes. A little concerning. So went to the ER, inconclusive tests on my left leg. Right arm, good news, no stroke. Woo-hoo! Wasn't stroking out. Yay, 2020. And that it was just a pinched nerve. So again, awesome year.
Mm-hmm. Full of surprises.
Mm-hmm. Came home, still couldn't walk on the left leg. Have no idea. Did do some research because it was just so bizarre that there's COVID long haul pain in your limbs. And I did have COVID at the very beginning of COVID. So I'm not sure if it's that, but just an interesting piece of information. And hopefully I can get the arm fixed soon with a shot.
Oh, man.
But my pump moment was when I got home, my good friend and co-host figured out that our family was probably in need of some food. And right when my husband was literally attempting the kitchen, just the kitchen in general, Liz texts and says, I just dropped off dinner. And it was so good. So good. That even my picky son was like, this is so good. And it was just the perfect thing that we needed after a full day in the ER.
Shit sandwich of a day. Well, I have to keep you healthy. You have to keep showing up here with me. I can't do this alone.
So true. So true. So that was it. So should we get into the meat of what we're talking about?
Definitely.
We're getting close to that time of year where everyone is anxious, trying to get the last minute Christmas shopping out of the way, trying to figure out their new Christmas what their new Christmas looks like, trying to figure out how to take care of their parents that now probably lives close by, or someone that lives further away, and how to take care of them. Everyone is just trying to make it work. But the news flash here, and the topic of our podcast, is that anxiety has been on the rise for a while, and not just during the holidays. Anxiety is so common, but many attribute this presumed increase in anxiety disorders to factors such as social media, poor sleep habits, lowered stigma, and underreporting in the past. Harvard Business Review says of anxiety, once in a lifetime catastrophes like COVID-19 and the Great Recession have disproportionately affected the careers and economic stability of younger workers. Millennials and Generation Z are the most anxiety-ridden generations coming up because they are digital natives, and Generation Z have never not known social media. But I would like to know, to our main demographic listening to the podcast, that we lived through both the Great Recession, 2007 through 2009. We were working adults through both. I'm pointing this out for two major reasons. One, we lived through the first one. It wasn't pretty, but we're still here. We all lost money. We might have lost jobs, or we had to move because of a company takeover. That's exactly how this California girl ended up on the East Coast. And you know, I wouldn't change that for anything right now. Did we have a hard time when we got here? Yes. It took a long time, and it wasn't pretty. We lived with my in-laws for a few years. I actually liked it better than my husband, but we were adults and we couldn't get a home on our own because I had a shitty job in Boston that paid pennies on the dollar. And again, we lost a lot of our nest egg in the downturn in our stocks. We have built it back up, and now we're in another fun time called COVID. But COVID didn't suddenly bring on anxiety for a lot of us. About 3 years ago, I was working late on a Friday, and next to a cube of a friend, I started getting really hot. I said to her, "Wow, I think I'm getting hot flashes." She's like, "You aren't old enough to get hot flashes." And then all of a sudden, I had trouble breathing, and she noticed, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I don't feel good. I feel nauseous." So I ran to the bathroom. My friend got me a Sprite, and I came back and laid on the couch. I felt like I was dying. She said, "I think you're having a panic attack." I was so stressed about what was happening to me, but at the time when it was happening, I wasn't stressed. And like one of our friends' favorite memes, it comes up like surprise bitch. And boy, did it ever. At work, I had something like 80 deliverables and 15 jobs, and was managing a team of 8 producers and 3 temps. So it was a lot. And one of my major projects was a music video that was not going that well. I went home and slept and called the doctor and got medication. And then I started reading up on it immediately. And started reading Dan Harris's 10% Happier. And by saying I read it, I listened to it on Audible. Because I'm a multitasking mom and I had a commute, and it's a lot easier to listen. For those of you that don't know, Dan Harris from Good Morning America had a full-blown panic attack on the air, and he couldn't find his words and he just blanked out. After that, he found another routine along the lines of meditation and yoga and more. And he's made a life out of it, and a new side hustle. I think his willingness and ability to talk about it, especially being so public in the eye, has really helped people after their panic attacks. I know this isn't a weird thing for those of us who are just type A, and I know this is happening for a lot of people. A lot still try and keep it a secret because they fear that the stigma is just too much. My girlfriends and I started opening up to each other the last few years, and wow, how freeing that has been. We have also opened up about CBD oils, gummies, and more, and what may work for us and what may not. For instance, when Liz told me about Atomic CBD gummies from Colorado and told me to only take half, as that
half
what
doesn't
she
cut
took,
it. Half does not cut it.
I was very disappointed after taking half quite a few times. I'm like, these suck, Liz. They don't work. Then I thought, that's just what Liz said.
I'm not a doctor, Liz.
Nope. And that's what the directions on the package said. So then one night when I could not sleep and I was totally anxious, I took 2. And you know what? I felt fucking great. So on those days that nothing is going my way and I'm up in the middle of the night with the radio station K-Fuck playing in my head, credit goes to my old boss, Chris Bender, for that one, then I need to pop 2 Rocky Mountain High Colorados and ease into sleep like a warm bath. So,
Oh my gosh.
Liz,
Yeah. So have you, since that first panic attack you had at work, have you had any more, or have they been as bad, or have you managed to kind of control it with the medication and all that stuff?
I've managed to control it with medication. Nothing's been that bad.
Okay.
That was the bottom, rock bottom. It was horrible, and I've had other friends that have had it at work. In fact, that day, one of my good guy friends who had one at work, I think right before that, like maybe 6 months before it, and I saw it happen to him, and he got taken out on a stretcher.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
He went down before a meeting started. And it was the scariest thing I've ever seen. Mine happened like after work when hardly anybody was there. And he was still there. And he was like, Linz, and so that was the only major one that I've had. And I've been able to use like deep breaths, meditation, medication.
Yeah, because you have a job that has a lot of pressure. You've got a huge volume of work, tight deadlines. There's no such thing as I can't do it, or we're not going to make the deadline. So
Right.
the situation that you had before you had that panic attack, I'm sure you've faced many times since the panic attack. So do you feel like kind of just acknowledging what that was and understanding what that was gives you a better mindset mentally? So as you're going into these situations that could potentially have caused those panic attacks, like kind of how to handle it a little bit better.
Exactly. Yeah. So I know I have tools now,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yep.
Medical or exercise or yoga.
Yep.
And just knowing and being able to talk about it, I think is key. And being able to talk about it with you and our other friends has been key of opening up and making it not a stigma.
Yes.
Because I remember about 6 years ago or something, one of my husband's friends talked about it, and we were like, I guess it was before people started talking about it, and Brian was kind of like, wow, that's interesting, but also wasn't acknowledging it, I think. And I look back on it and I'm really proud of him for talking about
It's going to be more difficult, I would think, for a man to talk about it than a woman, not to stereotype genders,
No.
but there's certain societal expectations. So I would think, you know, it's more difficult for a man to stand up and say, hey, I'm struggling with a mental health issue or anxiety or whatever.
I agree. And it was probably more, it was probably longer than 6 years. So he was probably in his 30s because he's the same age as us. So it was probably mid 30s. So,
Wow,
yeah,
the struggle is real.
it is.
I would say for me, my anxiety actually creeps up in smaller situations versus bigger situations. I mean, hearing you talk about the recession and, you know, all of that, and obviously Danny and I went through that too. And, you know, I got laid off from my job shortly after we got married. So we dealt with that. And, you know, during the multiple recessions that we've had since he and I have been together, he's almost lost, you know, he runs his family's business. He's almost lost the business more than once. And so those situations, for whatever reason, don't cause me anxiety. I think I have this, I don't know if it's a protective defense mechanism or protective mechanism. Like, we will need to figure this out because this is a really big deal and I can't panic about it. It's the smaller moments in my life that have always caused me anxiety. I've always been really tightly wound, even as a kid. I was always a rule follower, as I mentioned in episode 2. A little type A. If I got an A-, that wasn't good enough because I could have gotten the A. I always did extra credit, like the good little dork I was. Yes.
I think that's why we get along so well, Liz.
You know, but I was always, as a kid, you know, into middle school and high school, like very uncomfortable in my own skin. So I think my anxiety is tied a lot into my insecurity, and my self-esteem issues. And so, like, if you had asked me in middle school or high school, like, if you could have a superpower, what would it be? I definitely would have answered invisibility cloak, because walking down the halls of school or into the cafeteria was awful for me. I mean, I'm sure no one gave a shit about me, but in my awful, you know, insecure mind, I'm like, they're silently making fun of me. They're silently judging me. And, you know, it's just this terrible kind of mindset to be when you're preteen, teenager. I would say things definitely improved when I got into college and young adulthood and got my first job and became just a little bit more aware of who I was and what I wanted, and had a better sense of self and became more comfortable in my own skin. But I would say several years ago, those anxious feelings started creeping back up. I think as life gets more complicated, for me anyway, that's when those feelings start to rise. Like, I have a hard time shifting gears if what I think is going to happen ends up not happening. And it's little things. Like, it's kind of a dumb example, but like, if we were, let's say, meeting friends for dinner somewhere, and then last minute we find out, oh, their sitter canceled, so we're gonna go to their house for dinner instead, and we have to bring something. Obviously nobody's doing that right now, but anyway, that's the only scenario I can think of. Like, I had mentally prepared myself for one scenario, and now that scenario is different. And for me, my mind literally has to shift. Like, all right, now I need to make sure I have time to go to the store to get something. What time are we leaving the house now? Am I going to wear something different? It's just all these things go through my head about how to mentally reset for what this new situation is. I spent a lot of years presenting in sales finals at work, and that never bothered me. I could present in front of 5 people or 50 people and never, you know, you get a little nervous or whatever, but I would never describe it as anxious. However, what would make me anxious in those meetings is after I would present, if I'd be sitting there, I'd be like, I really have to go to the bathroom. I really have to go to the bathroom. But I didn't want to get up and walk across the room and out the door and have people look at me do that, because I was convinced I would trip, or I would do something stupid and I would embarrass myself. And then, you know, that's all anybody would talk about. And I'd have to quit my job. Like, that's my anxiety. So I just sit there holding it in pain for the rest of the meeting, instead of being a normal human being and going to the bathroom. I have like a little social anxiety, like walking into, like, if I walk into like Will's basketball game or something, and there's like bleachers full of people, like, I get very anxious about, like, where should I sit? Like, if I kind of know those people, should I go sit with them, or will they think it's weird that I'm sitting with them? Or should I sit by myself, or will I look like totally rude if I do that? So I literally just usually end up walking into the gym and like sitting down in like the first bleacher I can find and look like a weirdo. Because I don't know if people will think it's weird if I go sit with them, if we're not, you know, close friends or something like that. It's worse now than when my kids were little, for sure. I mean, you would think having infant twins and a 4-year-old, you'd be out of your mind with stress and anxiety. And of course, there's certain things that are stressful about it. But in a lot of ways, they were easier to control back then. They wore what I told them to wear. They ate what I gave them. We left the house when I needed to leave the house because I could just pick them up and put them in the car. You know, now they're more independent. They're more defiant. You know, there's more, you know, back talk. They're figuring out who they are. You know, bigger kids, bigger problems. And there would be times in my house that were so chaotic. Kids going crazy. I'm trying to make dinner. I'm answering work emails. Like the stimulation got so much for me that my anxiety would get so heightened that I'd start feeling chest pains, like a tightness in my chest. I never had a panic attack, but I definitely had that physical reaction where there was a tightness in my chest and I would have a hard time getting a sentence out. So I would try to say, please be quiet, but I would stutter. And I couldn't get the sentence out. And of course they would make fun of me, like, oh, look at Mom, she can't even talk. And it's just so obnoxious. And a lot of times I would go outside and sit on the front steps just to try to calm down, which took longer than it should because my 3 little monsters would be screaming, Mommy, Mommy, why are you outside? Mommy, Mommy, we're hungry. Mommy, Mommy, are you coming back in? So that didn't really work. And I do try, as you do, Linz, try to do a lot of things to help quiet my anxiety. I do yoga every morning. I play the piano as often as I can. I read for pleasure. But as soon as I'm done with those activities, like the Zen is gone. I have a really hard time saying, like, if I stop my yoga workout, I'm like, oh, I feel so good. Or I play the piano for 20 minutes. I'm like, wow, that really felt good. Like as soon as I walk away, it's like that switch flipped and all that relaxation is gone. I have a hard time carrying that calm around with me.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's like life just creeps back in so freaking fast.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know, and maybe I should spend more time thinking about it or thinking how I can carry that through. But like, I don't have the mindset to sit quietly with my thoughts. Like my thoughts are terrible. I don't want to sit quietly with them. So, and like you said before, you know, we both done the CBD gummies and those definitely helped a little, but I was, like you said, like I was taking like a lot more than the recommended dosage for my body weight. But again, listeners, CBD is different from THC. It's non-psychoactive. It's not addictive. You can give it to animals and all of that. But it just wasn't enough to quiet the anxiety. And then you enter COVID and quarantine and remote learning and my husband and I working from home together. And eventually I got to the point where I said, this isn't enough. I need to talk to my doctor. And I remember talking to you ladies about it, you know, like, do you think it's okay for me to call my doctor and ask her about medication? And you all were so encouraging. And we had the conversations about, you know, you got to advocate for yourself. And that's really what gave me the courage to make the phone call, was being able to talk openly with you guys about how I was feeling and how I didn't think I was going to make it. Like that whole spring broke me emotionally, and a lot of people too. But making the phone call to my doctor was hard. You know, it's so easy for us to advocate for our children, our spouses, our friends, or whatever. But raising your hand and saying, I need help is really, really humbling. And eventually, you know, especially where I felt like I was raising my hand saying, I don't know how to handle my own life. I know I put myself in this situation, but I just don't know how to deal with it. And that was really, I felt a little ashamed, you know?
That's where like we want to like break the stigma.
Exactly.
And I hope that you felt comfortable and safe because your friends were already on drugs.
Right. Yes.
We were already medicated. So it was like, how do I do this? What would they put me on? Maybe. Yeah. How is this work? If you find the wrong one, will they find the right one? You know, the whole like, oh yes, this is what happens. You know, so I was very excited that you said like, I need help because you get to that point where you're like, I am snapping. I am overwhelmed at every point and turn, and I can't do this. It's breaking me.
That's exactly how I felt. And I was being a really shitty mother because I was so overwhelmed with trying to perfectly balance the work. I can get all my work done at home. I'm going to be the perfect employee. I'm going to make sure my kids do all their schoolwork, and I'm going to make sure, you know, be the perfect mother. And it just, I couldn't do any of it. And you and I have said before, we give a lot to our jobs. And I felt like, all right, the expectations are going to be higher at work now because we're all remote. We're going to be expected to maintain the same level of productivity, accountability, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like really laser focused on that. I was woefully mentally underprepared for managing my kids' remote learning. And it just came to this breaking point for me. And I did call my doctor, and she was so wonderful. I was afraid she was going to be like, why don't you try meditating first? Or why don't you, give it a few weeks? And she was like, no, she's like, what you're going through is ridiculous. You have a lot on your plate. Absolutely. I think this would help. So she gave me an initial prescription. She put me on like the lowest dose.
That's what they do. And
yeah, just to see if the side effects. Yeah. It was not enough. Like 2 weeks into it, Danny's like, have the meds kicked in yet? Because I'm not noticing a difference at all. So when I went for my 30-day, or called in for my 30-day, check-in with her after I started the meds, I was like, listen, Dr. Shaughnessy, I'm still like a constant simmer all day, and any little thing I'm going to boil over. She's like, all right, well, I put you on the lowest dose. I wasn't sure if it would be enough. I'm not surprised it's not. Like, let's increase it. So she did. And quite honestly, it's been a game changer for me. I mean, I feel like if you had strep throat, you take the antibiotics, right? You wouldn't be like, I've got this, I can do it on my own. And for me, this is no different. And I fully realize and respect that not everybody subscribes to that belief. And for some people, holistic remedies work really well, or meditation, or whatever it is that works for you. I totally applaud all of that. If you can find something that works for you and puts you in a healthy mental place, then absolutely do it. This just is what is working for me right now. My kids know I take it because I think it's important to be honest about what you're struggling with your children, so they don't think that you're this cyborg that doesn't have any emotions or struggles. And I really think it's important to have those conversations with, at least for me, with my kids, because there is such a stigma around mental health in this country. And a lot of kids are dealing with anxiety and ADHD and depression, and they shouldn't feel like it's bad, or they're different, or nobody else, is going through what they're going through. So we've had very honest conversations about that. And especially I've noticed in my daughter little hints of anxiety. She gets very uncomfortable in new situations. The early part of COVID, where she couldn't see any friends, she was having a really hard time. So just, I don't want to project my issues onto her, but I want to be hypersensitive to what she might be feeling and going through, and knowing that she can talk about it. Because I think the sooner you have those conversations with your kids, the better, so they don't feel alone.
I think that's awesome that you've been so open with the kids, because it gives them a safer space to talk to you and be open if they are feeling anxious, especially now during COVID, but also just going forward when this all ends. And also, to reiterate what Liz said, we are not promoting drugs or medication. We are just saying to wipe the stigma off of mental health and do what you have to do for yourself to make yourself healthy. And this is just what has worked for both of us. And we are talking about it to make sure that people talk about it with their friends, so they don't feel so alone.
Yeah. I mean, if I hadn't had that conversation with you guys, Linz, and you hadn't encouraged me, I think I would have gone on suffering in silence for a while, to the point where something really bad might have happened, So I think just give yourself some compassion and some grace, be honest, because you're going to end up finding, it's the same thing, with IVF. Like, once you start having these conversations, you're going to find a lot more people who are going through what you're going through, who want to be supportive, who are sympathetic. And I just think, especially now, that's, what we have to do.
Agreed. So, Liz.
So, should we shift gears to what's in the box?
Yes, I think we should.
All right. So a week or so ago, I'm in my office working, and I hear Danny yell from the other room, "Hey, hon, why did we get a box full of rubber duckies?" And I was like, "Oh, I did order those." So
what?
So my dog, knowing that COVID Thanksgiving was going to be very lame this year, I was trying to come up with, like, what could we do to make things fun for the kids on Thanksgiving, because we weren't going to say family, and my daughter was really, really disappointed we weren't going to see her grandparents or her cousins. So I thought, like, let's have, like, similar to an Easter egg hunt, like a turkey hunt. So I scoured the internet for, like, little trinket turkeys or something like that we could hide in the yard that they could find. Like, you find Easter eggs, and whoever got the most gets a prize.
That's very cute.
So I ended up finding on Oriental Trading these rubber ducks that were dressed or made to look like pilgrims, Native Americans, sorry for the cultural appropriation, and turkeys. So I was like, perfect. So I ordered 3 dozen of them. And I, as soon as I hit add to cart, I totally forgot. And you could do the Amazon Pay thing. So I just did that, and that's linked to Danny's email. So I didn't even get an email confirmation, and I promptly forgot I even ordered them. And there might have been some Cabernet-induced amnesia there. I don't know. So anyway, I completely forgot. And he's like, what's with the rubber duckies? And so I was like, oh yeah, we're going to do this, turkey hunt on Thanksgiving, fun for the kids, blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, that's in theory sounds like a great idea, Liz. He said, but on Easter, there's like plants and flowers and bushes where you can hide the eggs. He goes, everything's brown and dead out there. He's like, where are we gonna hide these ducks? He's like, I have to bury them. I was like, we'll figure it out. And I won't spoil the outcome of the turkey hunt for you. I will save that for another episode. But that's what's awesome. In the box for this week. Rubber ducks.
That's amazing. So what's in the box for me? We got this tiny box, and Brian's like, what is this? And I was like, read who it's from, because of course I always have to order everything in this house. And on the East Coast, again, people get baptized all the time, and you have to get silver stuff. Like, I'm questioning it because we don't do this.
Wait, do you guys not get baptized on the West Coast?
We might. I don't know. Like, we're not heathens.
I know. Wait, were you and your brother baptized?
No.
Oh, okay.
So, and even if that happens on the West Coast, the thing I do not get is giving silver
To a baby.
to
Yes.
babies.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
It does not make any sense, because guess what, Liz? We have 4 silver spoons, a baby rattle, 3 cups, and all this jazz from Braden's baptism.
That is old school, I feel like, though. That's an old school way. More often than not now, I think people go the savings bond route. That the silver stuff is that Brian's family is pretty old school, right?
You think?
Yeah.
So their family's big on the napkin rings, okay? With the initials. It's a family tradition. So we lived with them, like I said in the beginning of this episode, for 2 years. Brian and I swear that we got this napkin ring out because we lived with them. So our son's napkin ring, we swear, is in their house somewhere. All of his other silver wares, his treasures, are downstairs, laid out, and the napkin ring has been missing for years.
Oh my God.
So we had to order another napkin ring.
Oh my God.
And we did it because our niece is getting baptized next weekend. So we also ordered her a little turtle music box,
Oh, that's cute.
which is really cute. Plays Brahms' Lullaby.
Oh.
And because my sister-in-law is very into turtles and crabs, and she was going to be a marine biologist, and they have 2 turtles.
Aw.
So, and it has her initials. This thing on the internet looks like it's like this big. The box comes, it is this big.
Oh no, you got catfished.
I did get catfished, and it was expensive.
I bet.
And I was like, this thing is like this
Like
big.
palm of your hand, tiny.
Tiny.
Oh.
So ordered a second napkin ring and the baby turtle.
The napkin ring is hysterical.
Not very funny on this side of things.
What practical application does the napkin ring have?
It serves 2 purposes, 3 purposes.
Okay.
Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas.
Gotcha. Okay. You know, when they're teenagers, they're going to sell that shit for weed. So
Completely.
we do have these weird East Coast Catholic traditions like that. Mm-hmm.
I don't understand them. I don't even understand the baptism thing, if you're asking me. But
Well, we'll discuss that further on a future episode.
we will. We're going to discuss religion on a future episode. But when I married into the family and Brian said, we're getting Braden baptized, I said, great.
Mhm.
And then he put him in a dress that goes through many generations.
Yes, same.
And I said, we're putting him in a dress that's 50
6 feet long. Yeah.
years old. Yeah. Okay. I was
Mhm.
rolled with it. And then we're going to buy him a bunch of silver. Okay.
It literally sounds like it's 1720 in your
That's-
story.
And seriously, I did not understand any of it. But as a good wife,
Yeah.
I sat there and my mom and my dad didn't also understand it.
Mhm.
But we all kind of just sat there and we were there for the mimosas.
There you go. Oh, that's hysterical. Well, listeners, thank you guys so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And if you like what you're hearing, we would be so grateful if you subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you rate and review and subscribe, that is the way all of these podcast algorithm gods will promote us so other people can find us. Would be so appreciative if you could do that. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, or send us an email at multitaskingandheels@gmail.com if you like what you hear. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.